Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Lewis James. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of Dirranbandi State School, travelling from Dirranbandi, Queensland, and students on behalf of St John Vianney School, travelling from Parkdale, Victoria. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Edward Tregarthen Abell. Affectionately known as Garland, Edward was born in Brisbane on the 14th of May, 1890, to Edward and Elizabeth Abell. His father, an English immigrant, was Under-Secretary in the Chief Secretary's department. After his schooling, Edward had attained a job as a clerk in the civil service in Brisbane. After war broke out in 1914, Edward Abell enlisted on the 20th of May 1915 at the age of 25. Private Abell was assigned to the 8th Reinforcements of the 9th Infantry Battalion and underwent 2 months of basic training. In August, Private Abell set sail for the Middle East, arriving on the Greek island of Lemnos. Private Abell and other reinforcements were slotted into the 9th Infantry Battalion of the AIF, which has just been evacuated from Gallipoli. The battalion spent several months recovering and training in Egypt, and Garland was promoted to corporal. In late March 1916, the 9th Battalion sailed for the Western Front. Within 3 weeks of being in the trenches in France, Corporal Abell was seriously wounded in action, with a gunshot wound to the head. He was invalided to England, where he remained for 4 months. When he returned to France, the Battle of Pozières had just concluded, and his unit was taken out of heavy action. The 9th Battalion was moved to Belgium, where they rotated through the front lines of Ypres. In early October 1916, they returned to the Somme region just in time to spend the bitterly cold winter of 1916 to 1917 in the trenches. However, in December 1916, Corporal Abell became ill and had to be evacuated to England. He never returned to the field and was returned to Australia to be discharged from service in January 1918. Garland received a small, short-term pension to compensate for the effects the war service had on his ability to work. He soon married a woman by the name of Vera Hilda and eventually returned to work as a civil servant in Brisbane. When the Second World War broke out in September 1939, Garland Abell decided to enlist. However, at 50, he exceeded the age limit for overseas service. But like many other ineligible men, he was determined to go and lied about his age to the recruiting officer in Brisbane. He declared that he was 39 years old and had no previous military service. Private Abell was once again in khaki. He was transferred to the newly formed 2nd 26th Infantry Battalion, which trained at Red Bank camps in Brisbane. In June 1941, Garland was transferred to the 2nd 15th Infantry Battalion and departed for the Middle East. When Private Abell joined the 2nd 15th Battalion in North Africa in the late summer of 1941, they were well into the defence of Tobruk. The unit was finally withdrawn in November and moved to Palestine for rest, then training and garrison duties in Lebanon and Syria. But in January 1942, Private Abell was evacuated to hospital for treatment to his abdomen, but died on the 24th of February 1942, aged 51. Garland is buried in the Gaza War Cemetery with a headstone that gives his age as 41. His wife, Vera, personalised this epitaph with the inscription, "In loving memory of Gar." She died 17 years later. Garland's name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His picture is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Edward Tregarthen Abell, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.